Good evening, everyone. Coming to you from Santa Fe, New Mexico, I'm Scott Harrison, Artistic Director of Ironweed Productions, and want to welcome you to Talking Theater Santa Fe, our first episode in 2021. Talking Theater Santa Fe is a series of conversations between me and Santa Fe theater artists, sharing stories about their experiences in the theater and the unique paths that led them to creating theater in Santa Fe. I'm very honored to have as my guest this evening Santa Fe actor Rudy Froggy Fernandez. Rudy, thank you, Froggy. Thank you so much for joining me tonight.
And thank you for inviting me.
A little bit more about Froggy before we get started. Froggy Fernandez is a native New Mexican, born and raised in the northern village of Penasco. He moved to Santa Fe in the mid 50s and attended Santa Fe High. He worked at a gas station, then as a banker, in auto sales, then as a realtor until he retired in 2005. Froggy's been deeply involved in the community as a member of the Caballeros de Vargas since 1961, the Santa Fe Fiesta Council since 1981, and he served as a Santa Fe County Commissioner from 1981 to 1984. Froggy also serves on the board of Teatro Paraguas. Froggy began acting in 1986 with a speaking part in the Milagro Beanfield War, directed by Robert Redford. Since then, he has acted at Northern New Mexico College with Santa Fe Performing Arts, Teatro Paraguas, and the Santa Fe Playhouse. And recently, Froggy appeared as Pop in Teatro Paraguas' 2019 production of Elliot, A Soldier's Fugue, which was part of the Elliot trilogy by Chiara Alegria Udas. So, Froggy, I always like to start at the beginning. And with you, I'd love to just talk to you about your experience, your first acting experience in the Milagro Beanfield War. I love that movie, directed by Robert Redford. How did that come about, and what was that experience like?
Okay, I applied for an extra position. And of course, they gave me the job of an extra. The first day on the scene, we were doing a scene inside a bar where some guys are shooting pool. And they asked me to sit in against the wall with beer in my hand. And lo and behold, here comes Robert Redford walking in. And I'm looking at Robert Redford like, wow, there's
Yeah.
Robert Redford. So Robert Redford walks up to the camera, getting ready for the scene. He looks in the camera and he tells the first director, take the old guy out of here. So the guy goes up to me and says, you're out. And I said, oh, okay. A few minutes later, they're still in the same scene. They call me back in at the scene to be the one playing pool. At that point, Robert Redford asked me, what's your name? I said, Rudy. And he said, okay, I want you to pick up the cue stick. And when I say action, just look towards the camera. I said, okay. So after that, he said, okay, you're out. So the first director under Robert Redford by the name of Chuck Myers came out and started talking to me. And he asked me what I did for a living. And I told him I was self-employed.
Yeah.
And he asked me, how would you like to come work for us full time? I said, wow, doing what? And he said, as a stand-in. I said, what's a stand-in? And he said, we'll teach you. I said, okay, sure, yeah. So
Wow.
day one, I started working with them. And of course, I quickly learned what a stand-in was.
Yeah.
And I did the stand-in for the old man, the Amarante that walked around with a pig. And I did the stand-in also for the sheriff, which was Ruben Blades. And I did the stand-in for Joe Mondragon, Czech Venera, the guy that played Mondragon. So I was doing the stand-in for all these guys during the different scenes. And then they asked me to become a production assistant. So I said, why not? I mean, I was there all the time. And so I started with a production assistant. And then in one particular scene, they asked us to go into the little grocery store that they had. And there was one fellow that was taller than me standing in front of me. And they asked us to stand there for this particular shot. And Robert Redford comes up to the camera and he says, that guy's too tall, move Rudy to the front. So then he asked me, do you know your line? And I said, what line? And he told me, just say 30-30 Winchester. I said, okay, 30-30 Winchester. Boom, a take right away. So right after that, I had a speaking part automatically. I had to sign the SAG agreement
Oh
and
yeah.
what have you. So yeah, right. So with that happening, after that, Chuck Myers told me that I would be doing another part where I would be shooting the rabbit, and I don't know if you saw that scene where I shoot the rabbit, and I sing in a couple of places, and then I'm also in the scene in the little church right before they started a big fight where I have another big line. So and then I'm all over the place, uh, you know, like a featured extra also.
Yeah.
But and one other person that I did a stand-in for, and it's actually sort of funny, but I did the stand-in for the pig, for Lupita the pig. And Robert Redford knew that I would do whatever crazy thing he asked me to do. So in order for me to be the stand-in for the pig, like when the pig was out on the field and right before they shoot it, I had to be on all fours running up and down the field so that the cameramen could get the camera in line with the
Yeah.
track and all the lighting and everything else that goes on. So when the movie was over, Robert Redford signed my book and says, "You were great, especially as a pig."
Wow. Oh man, what an incredible experience.
Yeah, yeah.
So
So I became, yeah.
how long of a period were you involved then? How long was that
The
period?
filming took exactly 4 months. We started in
Man.
August, September, October. Well, let's see, no, almost September, October, November. We finished in December, and it was cold
Mhm.
when we're doing that shooting. Of course, it was supposed to be springtime, not well when we were planting, and of course the fall for picking up the beans. But it was for 4 months. I worked for them throughout the entire day one till the end.
That is what an amazing experience. And did they film that in Truchas or was it in Penasco? Was that?
No, it was mainly in Truchas,
Yeah.
except for the interior scenes. The interior scenes were done here in Santa Fe
Hmm.
uh, at the old Capitol Ford building. I don't know if you remember where that one was at.
Mm-mm.
It was there on Guadalupe Street, the old Capitol Ford building. They had all the interior scenes done in there. You know how they rebuild all the rooms and houses, the interior part.
Yeah.
So everything, the interior shots were done here in Santa Fe.
Yeah.
But we were in Truchas almost every single day.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Man. Now, so what was it like? And what was Robert Redford like? What was he like as the director? What was that process like?
When I first started working there, of course, they tell you don't talk to the director, don't
Mhm.
ask questions or what have you. But after I started working and doing the things that I was doing, he got to be real friendly with me. And matter of fact, besides myself, I had a couple of horses, a horse trailer, and they hired my horses and my horse trailer, and they used my horses in the movie. So Robert Redford, since I had two horses, he would before we start shooting, he'd go over there and ask me if he could saddle up the other horse with me. And Robert Redford and I would ride around for a while. And you know, he's a nice person. I mean, he's got his mind on what you got to do, and you
Yeah.
know, you don't bother him during that. But Robert Redford is a real nice person to work with.
That's wonderful. That is just wonderful. Well, what a great thing that I mean, just a great story about being just open to whatever possibilities came about and just having this
Mm-hmm.
incredible experience on this film. Gosh, I was thinking when I was about this and when about, asking you about the Blanca Beanfield War, and it made me think about because about Robert Redford. I really love the films that he directs, and I remember seeing Ordinary People when he directed that, which was just such a powerful movie. And it was a really cool story about casting that I read about with him because I remember Mary Tyler Moore, who plays the mother Beth in that movie, is she's so kind of removed and cloaked and kind of distant from her son. And I remember I'd seen Mary Tyler Moore on the Mary Tyler Moore show, and I was just like, how did he come about casting Mary Tyler Moore in this role, which just seems so different from what I had, seen of her. And I read this in this article, a story where he talked about how he was, I guess he was in Los Angeles and he was on his balcony, and it was in the process of when he was cast in the movie, and he saw this woman walking down the sidewalk, and he didn't know who she was, but she just had this coat on, and she had this scarf, and her whole persona was just, she was just very cloaked and just very guarded. And as she walked past, he realized it was Mary Tyler Moore, and he was just like, that's Beth, that's the character, and he cast her. So anyway, I just
Mhm.
it sounds like too, as a director and from your experience, he's also just very open to things that happen, and just um, he ended up having you be part of a lot of different parts of the film. That's really cool.
Yeah. And
Did
the other
you
good thing, I'm
oh,
sorry.
go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say the other nice thing that happened. He gave a lot of speaking parts to people that didn't have speaking parts to begin with. I mean, the local people
Wow.
ended up with little bits and pieces here and there. So it was really wonderful that he used the local people.
Yeah, that's great. That's really great. And did when you had that experience, Nat, so you hadn't done any theater before that experience? Had you done?
No, I hadn't.
So
You know,
did after that, did you get after that experience, did you feel like, man, I want to do more of this? Did you have,
yes, I did. Matter of fact, there was another person that worked closely with me, and both of us started talking about, man, we have to pursue this a little bit more. And Chuck Meyer tells us, do you guys realize how many actors there are out in the world that are trying to get parts in movies, and only a few make it, you know? So, I mean, he put us, or he told us the facts of life about
yeah.
acting in movies. But so I did work on a couple of other movies. I worked on Young Guns. Chuck Meyer, the director for Robert Redford, was also the director for Young Guns.
Mhm.
But in Young Guns, I was only the stand-in for Emilio Estevez, who played Billy the Kid.
Mhm.
So, and I worked on that film also from day one to the end, but only as a stand-in for Emilio. Then I worked on Swing Boat. I had a featured as a featured extra. They had me as a priest, but I never got any more speaking parts.
Mhm.
But I started doing theater, and
Mhm.
I loved theater. You know,
Yeah.
at first it was a challenge, but yeah.
What in terms of theater? Because yeah, theater and film are such different, different animals. What is it about theater that you like that's different from film?
Well, when you're working on a film, and I saw this with a lot of the actors, they would have to do the scene over and over until they got
Mhm.
it right, or they said their word right, or whatever. But when you're on stage on a play, and once the curtain opens, baby, you're on, and you
Mhm.
better not forget your lines or
Yeah.
or your cues.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so my first experience, if I can go on, was at Northern New Mexico Community College. I had a
Uh-huh.
part that they offered me as a prospector on the Mad Woman the Chaillot.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And yes, so I tried really hard to learn all my lines, but when the curtain opened, I realized that here I am on the stage, and I better not. I started freaking out, to be honest with you, because I thought, what if I forget my lines?
Yeah.
What if I forget my cues?
Yeah.
And that was going through my mind just as I was sitting there, because the scene opened and I didn't have to walk up for about 30 seconds after the scene. And I got so nervous, but I got through it. And after that, I thought, okay, relax,
Yeah.
relax. And so that was my first experience on that play. After that, I did a few other plays with the Northern New Mexico Community College. But yeah, it's scary when you're on
Yeah.
stage and you know that they're not going to cut and start through over again.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. That's yeah. It's interesting. It's funny because it makes me think of one of my experiences I had when I was doing summer stock. This was, gosh, like in the early '90s, and we were doing Carousel. And I don't really do a lot of musicals. I don't really sing, but it was summer stock, and so we were doing several different plays. And so I had a singing role in Carousel. I was playing Jigger, and he's like a sailor, and he's got like a rough around the edges voice, and so I was, I was fine to sing that part, and I actually had a great time. I had a great time. But I remember the opening night of the show, and I wasn't like I was nervous or anything, but the opening night of the show, the intro to the first song came on that I was like singing a solo, and I couldn't remember a single word. And I was like,
Oh,
"What happened?" And I hear the intro coming, so I ended up I ended up singing the entire first verse just in absolute gibberish. Like I was just like just making up words, and everybody on stage with me just had this deer in headlights look. But it's that same thing. It's like, the music wasn't going to stop. So
mhm.
anyway, well, do you have, are there particular, in terms of the theater, are there particular kind of stories or characters that you're more drawn to? Like, wow, I really love these kind of stories or these kind of characters.
Mhm. Right. Well, after Northern New Mexico Community College, I got a call from Nick Sabato over the Santa Fe Performing Arts to see if I'd be interested in playing the part of Papi, the father, in this play that was written by Oscar Rodriguez called Lotto. And I accepted the part, and that became my home. So Nick Sabato taught me a lot,
Yes.
and I worked with him on uh, the ones that I remember the best, because there were so many that we did at Santa Fe Performing Arts, but Lotto, and then I also did Ay Compadre, that was written by Rodolfo Anaya, and then we did I did Bless Me Ultima. That was with the Vortex Theater up in Albuquerque, and the
Did you do?
reason I ended up there is because Dolly Rivera,
Yeah.
I met her on the Lotto play because she was my wife when I played Lotto at the Santa Fe Performing Arts. And then when we did the play Ay Compadre at Santa Fe Performing Arts, she was my wife again. And she's the one that talked me into joining the board over at Santa Fe Performing Arts, which, like I said, became my home, and I was on the board there. But then Dolly called me to see if I'd be interested in a part with Bless Me Ultima. Audition for that, and I got a part. There's a priest and the grandfather also.
Oh
And
gosh. Yeah.
right, so most of the things that I've been doing with Paraguas also is being like the grandfather, like the older person.
Hmm.
I'm playing the part of a priest a lot with the Teatro Paraguas, but
Hmm.
uh, I totally enjoy theater. And the reason I do that, or because I say I like it, is because it keeps me alert,
Hmm.
and it it, it keeps my brain a little sharper. I keep learning more every day.
Hmm. Yeah, I love that about it too. I mean, it's interesting because there's all these different elements that you end up learning more about doing theater, like history. If you're doing a play that involves history, I learn about different historical things that I didn't know about, or different periods of time, different places where these characters live. I really love that about it too. There's part of it for me is just as much enjoying learning about the life of this person or the setting of this story as actually kind of working on the play itself. I really love that part of it.
Right.
How was it? What was that? That's so great that you got to work with Vali, because she just did such a beautiful job directing Water by the Spoonful, which when we were part of the Elliott trilogy, the Playhouse and
Right.
Ironweed and Paraguas. That was such a beautiful production that she directed. What was it like? What was it like working with her as a director?
It was really good. Working with her as a director, rather than being my co-actor in the plays, as she was the boss and she was tough, and I really like that about her, because as we're like we were talking about developing the character and working on developing the play.
Mhm.
She was a real tough director, real good, and I really enjoyed working with her. I love Vali. I
Me
mean, every
too.
time I see her, she's such a great person.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, me too. And she has such a strong vision. Um, to everything that she does. And I love her. One of the things I loved watching, there were some rehearsals I kind of would, sit in on the very beginning of when we were kind of doing some production things and would see her working with the ensemble and just the work she would do with the ensemble, which was just really cool to see.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's another play that I did over at Teatro Paraguas that was a little bit different of a challenge. It was When the Stars Trembled in Rio Puerto. I don't know if you ever saw that play.
Yeah. 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 Uh-huh.
Yeah, there I played the part of a ghost. The four main characters were ghosts. I don't know if you remember that, but it was challenging because I had to show more emotion than I have shown in most any other plays,
Hmm.
and so it was more of a bit of a challenge. And there I also played the part of a priest, of a drunken priest at that. So in one particular scene, I had to get out from the scene that I was in, go put the priest uniform, come back out like a
Wow.
drunken priest, a
Yeah.
totally
Right.
different character, totally
Right.
different.
Yeah.
But so working theater has helped me a lot, and you know, and one thing about it, yeah, I kid that one of these days I'm going to take acting lessons,
Right. I saw that.
but but actually, I have been taking acting lessons from the day that I started working with all these wonderful actors,
Mhm.
because I have learned a lot from them, like I did from Volley, like I did
Yeah.
from Nick Sabato. I mean, I've learned a lot from working with these wonderful actors, even at Teatro Paraguas.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. That's such a wonderful thing, isn't it? I mean, I've had that same experience. I just, yeah, learning from the people that you work with. And I mean, getting the opportunity to work with people that are generous just about sharing their, um, yeah, sharing their skills or their process or, um, yeah, that's wonderful. Um, and you were with the Santa Fe Performing Arts then for several years.
Yes, I was
Yeah.
until Nick Sabato left. He retired from there, and I stayed on for a couple more months after that.
Mhm.
But then I got a call from Teatro Paraguas to see if I wanted to be in a play, and uh, I've done so many plays at Teatro Paraguas, I can't remember which one it was, but
Mhm.
When the Stars Trembled in Rio Puerto was down there. So
Mhm.
and then they asked me to be on the board, and of course I joined because I love being involved.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's something I wanted to talk to you about more too, just because you've been so heavily involved in the community throughout your life. And um, one of the things I love about Teatro Paraguas is just there's a sense of a community around the theater company. Um, and I just wondered if you could talk a little bit about just your experience around creating community within the theater.
Well, it's always a challenge to play a different character, and but working with the people like Argos and the people that have been around theater for so long,
Yeah.
and they're so creative in the way they do things, and even working with some of our other board members that I've got to know a lot better since I've been on the board. They're so creative. Alex Hudson,
Mhm.
Juliet Salazar, all these people. They've got, I don't know, they're way more theater than I am, but it's really been a great experience working with them, and
Mhm.
I just can't say enough about that, other than I've really totally enjoyed it, and I hope that they keep giving me little bits and parts here.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's great. Yeah, I love the work that they do, and I just love the feeling that they create too, just around the whole company. It's just this really warm, inviting community spirit that I just really value and treasure. Um,
Mhm.
what was the experience like working on Elliot, A Soldier's View? Because you were playing a veteran in that was that.
Yes,
So what was that
yes,
experience like?
it was it was like a real deep experience.
Uh-huh.
Having to play the part of the soldier. I was never in the service, by the way,
Yeah.
so for me it was uh, I, real heartwarming,
Hmm.
and just just actually trying to visualize exactly what I was doing, what the other soldiers were doing, what we were going through, what playing the flute. I even had to learn how to play the flute. Not
Yeah.
very well,
Yeah. Well, that's,
not very
yeah.
well, but just that entire experience was really wonderful because
Mhm.
it just gave me a totally different perspective of people in the service and
Mhm.
what they go through.
That's, yeah.
So yes.
Yeah. It was that's just such a beautiful production that
Mm-hmm.
Alex directed. Yeah, it was really
Mm-hmm.
moving for me to see because my dad is he was in the military. He retired from the military. Was a career military person and was in Vietnam and um, yeah, just really moving to see three generations of soldiers in a family, and their story,
Right.
and just to have that collaboration amongst the three different companies on the whole Elliott trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
How in how what you moved to did you move to Santa Fe when you were in high school? Is that when you moved from
That's right.
Penobscot?
Actually, I was in junior high, Lee
Junior high
Harvey
school.
Junior High. Yes. Then I
And
went to Santa Fe High.
what brought your parents to Santa Fe? What was
The fact that there was no work at all in Penasco. So my
Mhm.
dad was always out looking for work in different places. My dad worked in Los Alamos for a couple of years, and then he moved to, well, he came to Santa Fe looking for work and found a job here in Santa Fe. So he moved the family over here and looking for better opportunities for all of
Mhm.
us. And my dad always told us that I brought you here, son, or all my brothers and sisters. I brought you here for better opportunities for all of you.
Yeah, yeah,
But and I'll tell you what, I've done a lot since I've been here in Santa Fe.
yeah. Well, and for, how in terms of Santa Fe and your time here, what would you say are kind of maybe one or two are the biggest kind of changes that you've seen in the city? I mean, I know there's obviously been tons of changes. Are there one or two for you that are kind of most resonate most with you or
Absolutely. When I first came to Santa Fe, of course, the plaza was the meeting place for everyone in Santa Fe. Santa Fe was very small then,
Mhm.
but all the department stores were downtown. All the drugstores were downtown, shoe stores, what have you. And there were no art galleries in downtown, but that used to be our mall, basically. And I mean, all of us used to hang around the plaza all the time, every day. I
Mhm.
used to shine shoes on the plaza uh, when I was a kid. And then I sold the
Mhm.
newspaper on the plaza. Uh, but as I've seen Santa Fe grow, and another thing that I can remember, we used to ride our bikes out to Cordova Road when the state penitentiary was still there at the corner of Cordova Road and what is now St. Francis Drive.
I didn't
So
know.
I can remember Santa Fe being small and another thing, I remember when they built that swimming pool out the Salvador Perez swimming pool. I was wondering why are they building a swimming pool so far out of town? Because we used to
Oh,
live. Yeah, I
wow.
mean, man, that
Yeah.
swimming pool was way out there. But anyway,
Yeah.
so I've got some wonderful memories of Santa Fe, and I've seen it grow.
Yeah.
And then being a realtor, I'm just astounded by the growth of Santa Fe now.
Yeah. Is it hard to see like that the plaza was such a gathering place and I mean is it hard to see what it's become or
In a sense, yes, and I'm the fact that we have so many tourists that come to Santa Fe, and
Mhm.
the plaza is a focal point for them, and it's still a good gathering place. And
Yeah.
when we have our fiestas during the year, and even like for Spanish market and Indian market and all that, the Santa Fe Plaza again becomes the focal point for all of us
Yeah.
locals also to visit
Yeah.
and gather and be at. So we still have the opportunity, even though the Santa Fe has grown the way it has, to meet on the plaza. And uh, sad to see what's happened lately, but anyhow,
Yeah.
and now with the pandemic, of course, everything was shut down for us last year. But hopefully this year things will get better.
Yeah. Yeah. I hope so too. Yeah. Um when one of the things I'm always curious about with people that you grew up here in northern New Mexico, your roots are here, and you've lived in grew up in Piasco and you've lived in Santa Fe since then. Like I say, my dad was in the military and we moved around a lot growing up, and so I think for me, like I've always one of the things that even fascinates me still about the plays that I'm drawn to and the writers that I'm drawn to is that kind of sense of home, and what is home? Because I know when I was growing up, home kind of was always shifting, because we were moving. And
Mhm.
I've always just been interested in people that have deep roots in where they live. And um, what for you in terms of having deep roots in where you live and where you've lived your whole life, what for you has been kind of most meaningful about that?
I'm sorry, meaningful about where I lived
About
before? Or,
about having roots in where you live and
oh,
living your
absolutely.
whole
Well,
life in this place.
right. Absolutely. And I got to back up a little bit because I still have deep roots in Peñasco. I still have a place up
Yeah,
there, and I spend a lot of my summers up there. I have a few acres on the river, and we go camping up there a lot. So Peñasco, I still call home.
yeah.
But Santa Fe, I mean, this is where I really grew up. This is where I got my nickname. This is where I've used my nickname in politics, in business, and gotten to know so many people and been involved so much with the community. So maybe if I could tell you a little bit of the story about how I got my nickname.
Oh,
When I
absolutely.
Yeah, when I first came to Santa Fe, all the guys that I used to hang around with had nicknames,
Yeah.
except me. I'm a guy from Peñasco, right? Well, they were playing a song one day called "Ain't Got No Home" by Clarence Frogman Henry. I don't know if you've heard it.
No.
The guy Clarence Frogman could sing like a boy, sing like a girl, and sing like a frog. Well, when the record was playing, I could sing the frog part, and I started singing it, and the guys turned to me and said, "Frogman." And I got my nickname, and that was back about 1957 when I got my
Wow.
nickname Froggy.
Excellent.
Then, so all the guys that I used to hang around with, I only knew them by their nicknames. To this day, I don't even remember half of their real names. I just knew them all by the nickname, just like
Yeah.
myself.
Uh-huh.
And then I used my nickname uh, in everything I've done in life. For example, in politics, when I ran for county commissioner the first time, I ran under Rudy Fernandez and I lost. And people that I met, they said, "We didn't know you were running." I said, "Yeah, well, we don't know you by Rudy." So I changed my registration to Rudy Froggy Fernandez. And all my advertising was done Froggy Fernandez. And lo and behold, I won for county commissioner under
Wow.
the name of Froggy Fernandez. And
That's
so, I mean, the name Froggy has carried me through Santa Fe. In the real estate business, on my signs said Froggy Fernandez. So uh,
that's great.
it's, but yes, my entire experience here in Santa Fe has been wonderful.
Yeah. And how about now Penasco? Is there uh how has that village changed? I know how has that village changed since you were born since you grew up
Penasco is
there?
still a very small community.
Yeah.
And surprisingly enough, that some of the younger people have stayed there. Most of them have moved away because there's no work.
Yeah.
But some of the cousins, should I say, that have stayed there, they found work like in Los Alamos or Espanola. And some of them even drive all the way to Santa Fe to work. But a
Hmm.
lot of them have stayed living in Penasco. But it's still a very small community.
Hmm.
And matter of fact, my brother Edwin moved back to Peñasco about 15 years ago, back to the house that we used to live in, and he's still living there, and he loves it.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, that's wonderful. Yeah, I think yeah, it's always just interesting to me to talk to people who um yeah, who've lived their whole life basically in the play in this in a similar place to where they grew up. Do you feel like a connection to the land in New Mexico? And what?
Absolutely. Being from Peñasco, I mean, when I grew up there, back then we had no electricity, no running water, no natural gas, so we lived off the land.
Yeah,
Uh, and we grew our own, animals for feed for food, that is, and but we basically grew off the land over there. So coming into Santa Fe when I first came over here was very different for me because
Hmm.
I was so used to not having all of the things that I used to have in Peñasco. An
Yeah.
example of that, I'm just going to tell you, for example,
Yeah.
the first time I ever used a telephone was when I came to Santa Fe. I was in the seventh grade. I didn't even know how to use a darn telephone. Believe me, growing up
Yeah.
in Peñasco, it was a simple life, a beautiful life.
Wow.
And when I
Yeah.
go back there during the summer, when I go camping over there, I just sit there and I reminisce.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
That's beautiful. Do you have a favorite memory as a child of growing up in Penasco?
My mom used to love fish.
Uh,
So when we were growing our own crops, and we had to go hoe the weeds and do all that kind of stuff. So mom would wake me up, get my fishing rod ready, pack me a little lunch, and tell me to go fishing. I'd go up on the Santa Barbara River, and I would bring home 10, 15 fish for dinner.
mhm.
This is she loved to eat fish. So I always remember when mom used to wake me up, go fishing, and I say, "Yay, I'm going fishing." My brother can go hoe the weeds, But yeah, the wonderful memories like that. I could go on with so many stories, but
Yeah.
I always remember that one. Mom, go fishing. Yes,
That's
absolutely.
yeah. And who taught you how to fish? Was it your
It was sort of a learn by yourself kind of
Oh,
thing.
huh.
Yeah, yeah. Because at first I didn't have a fishing rod. We just go get a reed or a branch and put a piece of nylon on the end of it with a hook and with a worm. And we'd get lucky here and there. So my dad finally bought us a fishing rod. I can't remember how old I was, but my first fishing rod, other than using just a branch from the river. But yeah, I
Yeah.
learned by myself
Yeah.
and by
Yeah.
watching other fishermen.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Mhm.
it's like you said with your acting too, learning from other people and learning from watching other actors. Wow. Huh. Is that do you remember when that little theater in Penasco was built?
And I don't know when it was built, but I remember going there many times because they would only show movies on weekends.
Oh,
And yeah,
so they
so
would show
we
movies there, the little theater next to Sugar Names
right,
Cafe.
yeah. Back when I was growing up, yeah, we'd go to the movies and watch the cartoons,
Oh,
and
cool.
maybe they had a series of Batman or something like that, But and then we'd watch the movies there. We didn't go every weekend because we couldn't afford to go every weekend, but of course we'd go at least once a month to the movies over there. And I only lived from the theater. We only lived a block away from the theater.
Oh
My brother,
gosh.
yeah, just right down the street. And the little theater is still there. I know that they still, I don't know that they show any film there, but I know that they do some plays there
Yeah, I've seen it.
occasionally.
Yeah, I saw a play there several years ago. It's just such a cool little theater. I didn't realize that it had been there as long as it has, and
Hmm.
that they showed
Yeah,
movies there.
yeah, yeah.
That is cool. Wow. And in terms of just kind of the changes you've seen, um, what are there kind of changes in the theater over with Santa Fe over the years that you've seen that?
Well, nothing that I can say has been a great change. I
Yeah.
mean, my involvement in it, like I said, with the Santa Fe Performing Arts, and then with Teatro Pará was we just tried to keep things going and keep
Yeah.
entertainment flowing, as you know, and we have to work hard sometimes, and but it's real rewarding to be able to do that, to put on some good plays, and especially when you have a theater packed with people that enjoy theater.
Yeah.
So it's been real rewarding. So I just hope that it continues,
Yeah.
even though now we're doing a lot on Zoom, but we're still getting some audiences. but it's very rewarding.
That's great. Yeah, yeah, that's great. Um, and it's the website of Teatro Paraguas is teatroparaguas.org. Is that right?
That's good. Hmm.
Yeah, and so folks, if you yeah, just and I know there's Teatro Progress is doing lots of really innovative things with COVID. So definitely, if you don't know Teatro Paraguas, check out their website at teatroparaguas.org and see all the program that they're doing
Right.
in the midst of COVID. Some really creative stuff. Um, I wondered if you could tell me about. I saw the interview with you. I think this was 2014 when you all were doing the production of Los Tres Reyes Magos, which was at that time you said it was the 54th annual production, which would mean I guess that 2020 was the 60th. Could you
Right.
tell me about just tell me about that
Yes,
program?
of course, belonging to the Caballeros de Vargas, we started doing that play like 60 years ago. And I got involved in that, doing little parts and not really being an actor. I don't know. Everything is pantomime. We didn't have to learn our lines or do anything, just be on the stage. But I got involved with it years back. And then I started directing it back in when I did that. I directed it. I'm not a director, but I knew what our play had, how it had to come together. So during that interview, I was explaining. I think that was with the city of Santa Fe in that interview, but I was explaining to them about the Tres Reyes Magos and what the play was about. The
Hmm.
three kings looking for the Christ child, and of course they meet with Herod and the king that wants to get rid of the baby Jesus, and he sends the three kings on to search for the newborn child. And so we even go in that play through all the beheading of the children, and uh, it's quite a scene. So if people are still interested in seeing it this year, since we weren't able to do it, they put it on YouTube. So you can
Oh,
go to yes. So you can go to our YouTube under caballerosdevargas.org, and I think it's still on there.
oh,
They
that's
did the one from 2 years ago, I believe.
yeah.
That we couldn't do the same play, but they just ran the play that we did a couple of years ago on YouTube just to keep it alive.
That is great. 60 years. I mean, that is and
Right.
you I know when I'd watched the interview you were doing it was a free performance and
Yeah.
there are biscochitos afterwards and just a kind of celebration and that's such a cool thing. And do you know
Hmm.
will if COVID hopefully we move out of COVID this year. I mean, is it still planned to continue
Oh,
year after year?
absolutely,
Yeah. Yeah.
absolutely. And
Yeah.
we always do that in January. Yeah, usually the first or second weekend of January.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we're already looking forward to doing it next year.
That's great.
Hmm.
Wow. That's great. Well, I wanted to just finish off with one more question, Froggy. I'm always just interested in with theater folks. If there's one memory you have of any of the acting that you've done in the past that you just feel like for you was kind of or just a project that you were in that you felt like that was the most special one of the most special experiences you had in the theater. Is there one that kind of stands out or a couple?
There's several, but the last one that we did at the Santa Fe Playhouse, No Number Home, that
Yeah.
was I totally enjoyed playing the father again, and Luca, who was in Elliot, was my son in that particular play. But when you have to show a lot of emotion and in the character, and uh, I don't know, those are the plays that I really enjoy doing, where I have to become a different character and show a lot of emotion. I did that in No Number Home, like I did in When the Stars Trembled in Rio Puerco, and even in Elliot. I mean,
Yeah.
because that was a totally different character. So
Hmm.
yes, yeah, Elliot and No Number Home lately, those really stick in my mind.
Yeah. 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 Well, Froggy, thank you so much for this conversation. Yeah, this has just been so wonderful to have this time with you. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. If you ever want to go fishing up in Penasco, let me know.
I would look because I don't know how to fish, and I've always wanted to learn. So I should take you up on that. Yeah, I really appreciate that.
Okay.
Thank you so much, and it's just really great to see you as well. And thank you all very much for joining us. You just want to let folks know that are watching that if you aren't on our email list and you'd like to join, you can email me at ironweedsantafe@gmail.com. I'll put you on our email list and let you know about upcoming interviews and upcoming projects that we have down the road. We will post this also on our Ironweed Facebook page, which is at Ironweed Santa Fe. And we're also hugely grateful to Theater Santa Fe, which is theatersantafe.org. They actually host all of our interviews on their website. This will be our 28th interview. They have all of them there on their website at theatersantafe.org, and they have an online tab, and you can go to Talking Theater Santa Fe. But again, thank you all very much for joining us. Froggy, thank you again very much for this conversation, and you all
Thank you,
stay
Scott.
safe. Stay safe and healthy. Good night.